to order. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Mosby.
Present.
Councilmember Vega.
Here.
Councilmember Cordova.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Dirk Starbuck.
Present.
Mayor Janelle Osborne.
Here. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight's agenda item is, can everyone hear in the back? I want to check the volume. Good? Okay. And also remember to put your cell phones off or in vibrate mode. Thank you. Tonight's unfinished business is review and discussion of the fiscal year 2019-21 biennial budget. We will have presentation by staff. Council will then ask staff questions and get input. Then we will open for public comment and then return it back to council for further discussion and potential decision tonight and direction. I will hand it over to our city manager for presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, and for everyone joining us tonight. I appreciate you coming again. This is our fourth or fifth meeting we've had so far, so we're doing a very good job getting all the information out to everybody. At our last budget workshop, staff was tasked with bringing back a combination of option 2 and option 3. Those were the different options that we discussed at length at the last meeting. Bring those back as a combination, but without the use of any sales tax in order to balance those budgets. As such, we now have option 4. However, in order to give the council one additional option, so there are choices, it's always good to have choices, which doesn't include any sales tax, we also have an option 5. The idea was for council to be able to discuss both options before moving forward with a final decision. However, it's going to be a very short presentation night, so what we're going to do is have Dean Albro, our finance director, come up first. He wants to go over a little bit about the management services department and some changes in formatting on some of the budget books, just so everyone knows and understands what's going on. So with that, I'm just going to turn it over to Dean and have him go through his.
Good evening. Just wanted to do a quick update with management services. One thing I want to talk about was our system. We're getting rid of our legacy accounting system and going to a financial management system called Munis. We started this in September 2016, and we've gone through a bunch of modules, a lot of stuff that happens behind the scenes. We started with the general ledger, accounts payable, and some other ones. Okay, purchasing, inventory, and this last October, we did payroll. We've been working on fixed assets through quite a bit of all this, and we're still going to be probably working on that for a while. And then HR management, and we implemented this budget through Munis. This is the first time, so I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about it. And then we are rolling out the general billing, accounts receivable this week, and we'll be doing invoicing next week, so it's exciting, I think. And then later, in about 6 months, we'll be rolling out utility billing. I wanted to say thank you to Melinda Wall and our financial services manager, and Jeff Collins, our information systems manager. They're the ones behind the scene doing a ton of work, and I really appreciate them. Oh, and we'll be doing permits and inspections after that. One thing I gave to you, and there's some copies in the back if anybody wanted to look at them, it's basically the breakdown of our general fund. And I wanted to mention a few things that we changed in our publication, or we are going to change in our publication. If you look at the way we did in the old book, or our last book, I should say, we're doing 3 biennial budgets with a requested. So to me, it kind of feels like 3 guesses. We wanted to get away from that. We're trying to get to the GFOA checklist, and we're going to go to something a little bit different. We're going to go to 2018 actuals, and then 2019 projected, and then we'll have the 2 years and what we're recommending either to be proposed or adopted. So I think it's a much better analytical tool. You get to see everything. I think it's a good format. Like I said, it's one more checklist, one more check mark for our GFOA, which is what we're trying for an award. Other than that, I don't have a whole lot. I just wanted to give you a quick update. I'm going to turn it over to the city manager.
Yeah, told you it was quick tonight. So we won't have 100 slides to go through. So what we did, as I mentioned earlier, we now have an option 4 and an option 5. And they're in the back for those who want to see copies of it, because this is going to be really small. So option 4 is a combination, as I said, of option 2 and 3 from the last meeting. And it's tough to see, but if you have a copy, at the very bottom, right over here, we're still slightly out of balance by $71,000. In the size of budget we have, we can go back and we can make some tweaks to get that to balance to 0. That's not a very large number to have to worry about. So it does have the ability to balance. What I did do, you'll see some highlighted lines up here, such as this top line, 2, 3, and 4. I was just showing what was in 2, what was in 3, and what we did to merge the 2 to get to this option 4. So where did I leave my copy? So in this case, the difference is between option 2 and 3, we had a duplicate. So we had one that said hold 3 positions and police vacant. Another one said hold 2. So in this case, we went with holding the 3. So that was the savings of $600,000 instead of $400,000. So if you just sort of go down, you can see where the yellow, or that, whatever color that is up there, I can't tell. Those are the duplicative. So the second one, eliminate a battalion chief, that was identical to the one right below it. So you don't want to double count those. We had the reduce overtime and fire. One was 700, one was 600. We went with the 700. And then we pulled off the sales tax at the bottom. So again, with option 4, it's very close to balancing with these reductions. The option 5, the big difference here, and again, I apologize, it's so small up there. What we did is we adapted a little bit, trying to keep some internal services if we can. And the big changes here is we went ahead and pushed up our vacancy savings, if you will, what we would hold vacant. It'd be at the city manager's discretion. It went from 454 to 509. Instead of again, I don't like to talk in the positions, but we had 2 planning positions in the prior option. This one would be eliminating the 1 position, but through attrition, so it is a reduction from what the other one had. And reduce the fire roster to $600,000 from the 7. In order to balance, though, what we had to do is down here, it's hard to see in this dark blue, these deal with outside agencies. And I should have picked a better color for that. But it would be eliminating the contributions the city makes to the outside agencies. One is to the chamber, the human services contribution, Lompoc Museum, the CH3 contribution, and crossing guard contribution. Otherwise, the idea behind it was we were making all the reductions internally during the recession period of time. From my last experience during that was everyone sort of felt the pain. So this was spreading that around to everybody here. And again, it does balance to a 0 down here, just similar to the other one. So those are the 2 options that we asked for. The one option 4, we threw in option 5, so you can discuss the 2 of those or throw one of them out and go with one. But that was our presentation for tonight. It was bringing back those options. So we're here to answer any questions the council may have or any comments that you ask us.
Councilmember Vega.
Jim, on the subsidies that we do for all these private organizations, are these permanent reductions, or are these something that we can do maybe within a 2-year budget span, as far as a temporary reduction in funding? I'm not sure if that works under your models.
It's, in this case, if we're just balancing this budget,
Right.
then it would be for this budget. It would,
Okay.
if the council says forevermore, that's something else, but I was looking only at this 2-year budget process.
Okay, thank you.
Does council have any more questions for staff before we open it up for public comment? Seeing none, we will open for public comment. You will have up to 3 minutes. You are more than welcome to step forward. If there are several of you who would like to speak, please begin to line up to reduce the amount of impact on the time between speakers. Thank you.
Good evening, council. I'm going to have to talk fast to get this all in, so bear with me. I'm Amber Wilson, President and CEO for the Lompoc Valley Chamber of Commerce. The Lompoc Valley Chamber of Commerce was formed in 1903 and has been dedicated to promoting the Lompoc Valley and the prosperity of all of its businesses for over 100 years. The City of Lompoc and the Chamber formed a mutually beneficial relationship in 1967. For 50 years, the city has weathered many storms, yet has never weathered in its support of the Chamber. In 2018, over 3,000 people visited the Chamber's Visitors Bureau to obtain information on where to eat, stay, recreate, and live, many of whom were looking to relocate to Lompoc. In addition, close to 2,000 people called the Chamber for the same reasons. The Chamber mailed over 1,000 visitor and relocation packets to parties interested in either visiting or moving to Lompoc. In addition to services directly provided to the community and membership, the Chamber supports committees such as Leadership Lompoc Valley, Youth Leadership Lompoc Valley, Hispanic Business Committee, and Military Affairs Committees. The Chamber organizes Shop Lompoc, Shop Small events such as Small Business Saturday, Restaurant Week, Scarecrow Fest, Downtown Trick or Treat, and Holly Jolly Jubilee. Old Town Market, slated to begin this year on July 5th, is the Chamber's most popular event. Spanning 7 Fridays during the summer, Old Town Market brings in thousands to the community. Old Town Market offers over 100 vendor spaces for local businesses to participate and promote their goods and services while offering live entertainment, a kids zone, and different theme nights celebrating all things Lompoc for the entire family. In 3 years, the Chamber's Dancing with the Stars style fundraiser, Dance Lompoc, helped raise over $28,000 for 11 local charities. The Chamber provides opportunities for community members to participate in important panel discussions that affect the community through luncheons such as the reality of the riverbed, the cannabis conversation, and the status of the Lompoc parks. The Chambers partner with the City of Lompoc to present the state of the city each year, and with neighboring Santa Maria Chamber to offer community members the opportunity to attend the State of Vandenberg Air Force Base at Vandenberg. The Chamber supports issues that advocate for a thriving community, such as the endorsement of the Lompoc Unified School District's Measure E, Allen Hancock College's Measure Y, and Air Energy's East Cat Canyon project. Through regional economic development efforts, the Chamber recently provided 2 commercial property opportunities to White Fox Defense Technologies to expand operations into Santa Barbara County. The Chamber signed on with 16 business advocacy groups to advocate to bring U.S. Space Command to Vandenberg Air Force Base and is submitting a letter of support to the Coastal Commission to remove restrictions accessing Surf Beach. The Chamber has partnered with the Lompoc Adult School to create workshops that benefit the small business community, recently concluding a 3-part series on customer service as a direct result of employer feedback and the need for employees with adequate skills. It is hard to list everything the Chamber does and every way it touches the community. More than ever, Lompoc needs the Chamber during this time of limited resources. If Chamber funding is eliminated, every program we support will be impacted and potentially disappear altogether. There is no other agency that provides the unique and diverse services of the Chamber of Commerce. I strongly advocate for continued funding of these important community services. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Osborne and council members. I'm Ed Braxton, and I'm a member of the Public Safety Commission for the City of Lompoc. I come before you this evening to advocate for the safety of the people that live, work, and own property here in the City of Lompoc. Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution of the State of California states, and I quote, "All people are by nature free and independent and have inalienable rights. Among these are enjoying and defending life and liberty, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and pursuing and obtaining safety, happiness, and privacy." It's no mistake that this verbiage has been set as Article 1, Section 1. It sets the foundation upon which all other sections of the California Constitution are built. It establishes the rights of the people and the duty of the government to protect those rights. Without this foundation, nothing else matters. Within this section, it clearly states that the people have the right to acquire, possess, and protect property as well as to pursue and obtain safety. Again, the government has the duty to protect these rights. We currently find ourselves in a challenging fiscal environment as you consider this city's next budget. There has been pronouncements made by members of this council that are troubling to me regarding the role of our fire and police departments and the budgetary cuts these departments may be facing. So here's what I'd like to say. Without a strong foundation of public safety, there is no economic development. There's no economic expansion. We need a strong fire department and a strong police department. For example, if you cut funding to the fire department and have no plan to replace equipment or vehicles, there could be a detrimental effect to property owners in the form of higher property insurance premiums. The same could happen if crimes against property increase. If the perception that the city is increasingly unsafe, who will invest in existing property and that under development? Public safety and all it entails is the primary service any city must maintain for its people. To conclude, council members have taken an oath, in part, to uphold the Constitution of the State of California. I ask you, read Article 1, Section 1 for yourselves and make your decisions accordingly. What you do with this budget will have far-ranging consequences, many of which are unforeseen for many years to come. And I hope you have the foresight, courage, and wisdom to do what is right for the safety of the city's people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor and members of the City Council, I'm Judy McKinnon. I've been here before, and I've lived here for over 40 years. I have never seen the city in such dire straits financially, never. And I believe that there are members of this council who are responsible for a great deal of that because you failed to pay attention when you were warned years ago that the CalPERS debt was going to explode, that it was going to impact this city, and that we needed to do something to increase our finances. That's bring in more money. The way that cities usually do this is by building more, expanding, get more people in here, they'll pay property tax. You're proposing to eliminate two planning people. How are the building permits going to be processed in a timely way? Code enforcement is coming in for the same. Cities, streets, and roads, maintenance, parks, everything is due for a cut. What's the city, which doesn't look too hot right now, going to look like after those cuts are made? Citizens have been proposing for in the last several meetings that you do what you should have done 2 years ago and consider putting a 1 cent sales tax raise on the next ballot. and you are totally ignoring that possibility. You don't even want to say, oh, and by the way, if we were to do this, this additional income would help the budget by this much money. Although lots of people gave you reports last time around showing how that works. We're watching, and we all vote. Thank you.
Thank you. No cheering, no clapping, no booing. Please remain civil.
Okay. I'm Dr. Charles Blair. I live in Vandenberg Village. I lived in this area. Came to this area in August of '94 and wound up looking at the area in the Vandenberg Village. I grew up in Paso Robles, which and Lompoc today is much more like the Paso Robles I grew up in. I chose to, when I retired in '99, I chose to stay here because I really liked the area. Okay, I do not live in the city, but I spend a lot of time, a lot of things I really enjoy doing are in the city. I shop here, I pay my sales taxes, I enjoy many of the amenities, the parks, the condition of the roads, and we depend on the city for our police, fire, and such for the safety of these and maintaining these activities. These are important. And as I say, I've been active in various areas in here. I really feel that I've been very impressed with the professionalism of many of our senior and middle administrators and so much of the staff. I really urge the council to listen to what they have to say, not necessarily follow everything, but adequately listen to what they have to say and see that they are adequately compensated for their professionalism and work here. There was a letter in today's Santa Maria Times by Councilman Mosby saying this would be 100% increase in taxes. This is partly true. We pay, I understand I believe it's 7.5% sales tax, 1% of which comes to the city of Lompoc. So while the residents and those of us who shop here see a relatively small increase in the amount we pay, we get 100% increase in the funding to the city. I've heard Lompoc described as the armpit by our detractors, armpit of California. I feel that by maintaining, if we do not adequately maintain, this may be, and again, I urge the council to allow the residents of Lompoc to vote on a sales tax. I thank you.
Thank you.
Danielle Morgan. Back in 2017, the City Council was presented with the same budget information over the course of several months of budget meetings, and they chose to cut or freeze positions and services in order to balance only the 17-19 budget without looking to the future. Once again, they are being presented with the facts as laid forward by financial experts with over 100 years of combined experience, and again, you are choosing to ignore the facts and instead only want to cut positions, salaries, and services even more. Who knows? You may be even able to temporarily balance the budget this way, but what about 2 years from now when the deficit is even larger, and even 2 years later when the deficit is so large that the city can no longer even afford to make its minimum required payments? Will you then just retire, not seek re-election, and let the next guy deal with the problem that you are failing to manage? The City Council majority is trying to put a Band-Aid on a gaping wound for the second budget cycle in a row. You would like to cut administrative salaries, stating that they are too high. Have you then factored in the cost of recruitment and training when you lose trained and experienced employees to other cities that will pay what they are worth?
There are the costs of advertising for a position, the hourly cost of reviewing applications, testing, interviewing applicants, the hours and hours of training that is required for new employees to learn our systems, our processes, and the complicated rules and regulations that we have to follow in government work. And then you have to hope that employee works out, that they didn't come here to just get training and experience and then move on for better pay and benefits like so many have. So you saved a few $1,000s on a salary and spent much more than that on the revolving door of employees that you will get. You might also consider the cost of these ongoing budget discussions. Last cycle, it took over 6 months, and this cycle is shaping up to be no different. Every time somebody has to go back to the drawing board and get more information for you, it's costing time. Some of these people are doing 2 and 3 jobs already. You know what time is? Money. You are now costing the city a significant amount of money. You are choosing to look only at a tiny part of a long-term problem. You are ignoring the fact that you need to address not just the budget for the next 2 years, but the looming budget problem for the next 15 to 20 years. You will not find enough funds in some hidden account somewhere. You literally cannot trim enough salaries, positions, or write enough grants, or close enough parks to solve the problem. You have the chance to try to fix this now. I hope that you do not ignore it. I hope that in 15 years, when we've been forced to limit services and reduce our police force and contract out our fire department to the county and all of our parks are closed and your children and grandchildren are the ones up here giving speeches and asking that city council, when did it get this bad and why? I hope that we don't have to put your faces up there on that big screen and say, these are the people that had a chance to fix it and did not.
Thank you.
Make sure Dean doesn't cut me off early here. My name is Ron Fink. I live in the city of Lompoc. This is the 5th meeting you've had on this subject. You've been offered 2 options you were supposed to try to mold together. The city staff did that. You said you didn't want to cut public safety. Each one of these options cuts public safety from between $1.2 million and $1.9 million, depending on which option you choose. So I would challenge you, how are you not going to cut public safety and save your way out of this problem? Councilman Mosby, last meeting you claimed that you didn't know about the loss of revenue. Yet in December of 2018, you were presented a very careful explanation of why the revenue was short. Basically, there was no economic development, no new building. You didn't get the TOT tax you anticipated. Okay, there's no scenario available except for offering voters a chance to solve this problem for you, since you don't seem to be able to do it for yourselves. Sales tax, we need to vote on a sales tax measure to avoid those drastic cuts in public safety and perhaps even recover some of the former glory of the city by restoring the parks, roads, etc. You can't do any of that without money, and none of you wants to do that. I don't know why you're even sitting up there. You've been told you've been told about the budget shortage in every budget discussion since last September, but 3 of you just don't get it. There's no way to cut your way out of this. You can see that very clearly in these options that have been offered to you. If you cut your way out of it, you're cutting public safety. You're cutting everything in the city. When will you stop? When there's no city left? Why don't you try to stop micromanaging what you clearly can't comprehend and place this matter in the hands of the public? We figured it out in the first meeting where this information was presented to us. You're short on revenue. That's easy. Pass a tax. The only people that can't seem to grasp simple mathematics of the situation are the 3 of you that are denying us the right to vote on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Mayor, City Council members. My name is Kimberly Coy, and I'm a native Lompocian. I was born and raised here, and I now work for the City of Lompoc. And all I want to say is very short. I'm for the vote. Whether people are against it or for it, allow the people to vote for it or against it. Don't take that away from us. A sales tax will help. We won't have to cut the employees out. Don't punish us employees to balance a budget. We're already short on people. But again, I implore you, whether you're for it or against it, please allow the people to vote. I frequent the local forums a lot. And I see on those forums, there's way more people on there that want a chance to vote for this than don't. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Deb Andrews, Mission Hills. I want to thank the 3 council members that consistently put citizens first and take the long view. Thank you. I appreciate citizens that have brought up safety, number 1, to people here in Lompoc in California, and also CalPERS. The state is a big problem. If you had a policeman every 10 feet, it wouldn't help what Sacramento is doing. How do you open a small business when Sacramento has determined that criminals can steal up to $900 worth of merchandise a day, and it's a misdemeanor? Does not compound. They can do that Monday through Friday. Sacramento has also determined that some violent crimes should be reclassified as nonviolent, which includes trafficking of a child, abducting a minor for prostitution. That's now nonviolent. Serial arson is now nonviolent. How many fire department personnel do you need when serial arson is no longer a violent crime? Assault with caustic chemicals is not a violent crime. It's been reclassified. Felony assault with a deadly weapon is no longer a violent crime. It's nonviolent. You cannot tax your way out of this, what they have done. In addition, Marcy Scott, who's the CEO of CalPERS, hired a man from China. Mr. Meng is now our Chief Investment Officer for CalPERS, and she's very excited that they'll now be able to invest in Chinese stocks because Mr. Meng has a number of very good contacts in China. I'd like to remind everyone that China is a communist country and they control every aspect of Chinese life. If our tax dollars go to China, we'll need a lot more tax revenue. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Wally Waldo. I'm chairperson of the Lompoc chapter of March for Our Lives. Yes, Lompoc has a chapter in that national organization. I'm not going to address the public safety. I'm not even going to address Mr. Mosby's letter talking about the 100% increase, which is just another way of saying we're going to double our take from the sales tax. Why he doesn't want to do that, I don't know. But anyway, I'm here for our kids. How dare any one of you consider reducing our first response, our first responder capability? That's just unconscionable by anybody on a city council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, folks, ladies and gentlemen, councilmen, mayor. My name is George King. I've been living here for over 34 years. I've been a businessman in this town. I work with the city for various organizations. I work with the chamber. I work with military affairs. I raised 7 kids going to the high school. We have a problem in our hand when you talk about the state funding $3 million, and it's been missed over for the last few years or so. Now it comes to us. The 1% sales tax is about the only thing right now that you're able to generate some revenues to pay off the bill, plus in the meantime, go to the budget. Not so much to cut the people, that the people are going to pay the bill. If a council or a certain entity is overstaffed, you cross-train them to another department that could use some extra help. In the meantime, the extra money coming in would take care of our police, our fire, Parks and Recreation and everything. We have a problem here. All the sales staff, the various real estate are going to lose a lot of jobs. When they get out in this term, that people come in this town and say, how's the town? You say, okay, fine. How's your police? Well, it's okay if you're home on Monday, but Thursday and Friday is terrible. So you take it easy Monday and Tuesday because there's no cops. How's your police or your fire? Well, you better have a fire during the week because there aren't that many fire departments take care of your houses the weekend. So you're facing a lot of problems, especially when there's no fields to play soccer. They say, how's the sports program? Oh, it used to be good, but now the park has holes. People breaking their ankles and their knees. So if you live here in town, you and everybody sitting in the audience right now are all under the same problem. We live here. We have fire, police, we have sports, we have programs. And the thing is, if you live here, you should know how to take care of the town. And don't worry about this town being a mediocre town. We are not mediocre people. Our budget should not be looked at as a mediocre deal. We keep passing it on, and talking about it. You either live here or go by it. If the people in this town, you don't like what goes on in this town, you're welcome to go somewhere else. But we need to take care of the city and these people also. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Keith Fikert. I'm a resident of Lompoc. I've been looking at the numbers that they've been passing out around here earlier, and it does look like you guys can cut yourself out of this budget cycle. Unfortunately, that's not how interest works. The problem of cutting yourself out every year is going to get worse and worse and worse. So in a way, you're sort of left with this option of either cutting again and pushing the can down the hill and having to go through the same grueling process all over again in 2 years, or being a fan of democracy, just allowing it to go to a vote just so people can say yes or no. And I think for a lot of people here, regardless of how people feel about the issues or the price of tea in China or whatever they're feeling about Sacramento, that basically people can say, hey, I live in this community, I've invested interest in being here, and I just want to be able to be heard. So I hope that as a democracy that our leadership will allow us to have a voice. And that's all I'm asking of you guys tonight. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Carol Redhead. I moved here about 3.5 years ago. I retired here because I thought, after looking at all the cities I've been to, from Mexico to Alaska, this is a jewel of a city, and I loved it here. So when I first moved here, I was enjoying the town and everything in it, and I joined an art league and different things, and then I found out they wanted to put a drag strip in the middle of this town. Well, at some time, I had lived in West Covina. I don't know if y'all know where that is, but we could hear the drags in Azusa, from Azusa to West Covina. And I thought, I worked so many years to pay for a home down in Orange County and be able to sell it and buy a home here in this beautiful town to have a drag strip put in. And guess who the 3 guys who were for it? They're still sitting on the city council. This was your answer to more money in this town. And you had a grant of $1 million from the state until the state found out what you were up to. And you had to give back about $700,000 of that. But then you left the city in debt that had to pay for about $350,000. So that cost us that much money. Guess what? You could have used it for an extra policeman, extra fire, all kinds of other things. And it took so much time, and the staff, year after year. I used to come to your council meetings. I could not believe what was going on. So for your private little enterprises, you 3 guys, I'm really worried about how you're going to handle this budget. you have a couple new people on the city council who seem to see reason, and they know how a city tax works, a 1% city tax works. They know how it worked. They kind of gave you a little lesson last week on it, and last month, I mean. And, 1%, I'm willing to pay a penny on a dollar to help solve the problem here. I hope you listen to, I've never seen so many people on both sides of the political aisle come together for the same thing to help save the city from circling the drain. And we're circling the drain. Please listen to all the people and let us vote for a city, just a simple sales tax. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't fill out a slip. My name is Janet Blevins. I've lived in Lompoc for 33 years. I taught for 33 years in various places, most of it here in Lompoc. My heart is beating faster than it does when I climb up to the cross at the mission because of how upset I am at the 3 members of the council who, for an a reason that I can't understand. You guys must have ulterior motives, and I don't know what they are, but this makes no sense. You talk about wanting to preserve the quality of life in our city or even to improve business opportunities. Who in God's green earth is going to want to buy a $500,000 home in our town when we will not fund schools, for one thing? That's out of your control. But public safety, that is your number one responsibility, to take care of the safety and health of the people in this community, and you aren't willing to fund police and fire. It is despicable. And I don't understand it. What is the real reason? Maybe one of the council members who owns property on the eastern end of our town, and when you drive into our town from the east on 246 and look to the north right before River Park, you see what looks like untended property that has gone to hell in a handbasket, as my father used to say. What is that person's reason for wanting to turn our city into looking just like that property? I would like to know. There's an ulterior motive here.
Thank you.
How you doing? Charlie Martinez, a local Lompoc resident and president of Vandenberg Professional Firefighters, local F-116. And I had a lot to say last time. I only had 2 minutes to say it, so I kind of got talked really fast, so I apologize for the last time I spoke. But just to refresh your memories on the state tax before the question comes up again, it comes out to $123 a year per household. So that's $10.25 a month per house per month. So that answers that question before you ask it again. That's how much it's going to cost. That's not much money per household to fund a 1% sales tax. All right, those are the facts. We talked about that already. Please don't ask that same question, how much it's going to come out to. You guys are elected leaders of the city. And as such, you should conduct yourself accordingly, okay? We're talking about numbers here, and you want accurate numbers, and we got one of you guys throwing fire department under the bus by throwing out a wrong number, $829,000 or $928,000 in overspending on camera, and throwing fire department under the bus when it was proved to you afterwards by city, by local 1906, saying the number was wrong, and you're backtracking, saying that, no, that's the number I got. Here's the paper. All right, the number's still wrong. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, maybe my numbers are wrong, I'll get back to you. You're human. There's nothing, you're human, you guys are definitely entitled to be wrong sometimes, and hold yourselves accountable. Okay, you're already dealing with low morale. What you don't need is elected leaders talking bad about the fire department and have the nerve to call them right afterward, after the uniform, and say, hey, I'm not against you. You can't sit around and say, well, wait, we're not cutting jobs. I didn't say to cut jobs. When you tell them to cut funding, that means jobs. Don't insult our intelligence. Don't insult the intelligence of my brothers and sisters to work for a Lompoc Fire. or my brothers and sisters that work for Lompoc Police. Don't do that. This kind of conduct is not only shameful, it's disrespectful. It's not the kind of conduct I expect out of a city leader. You can't cut your way out of this. It just ain't going to happen. You'll be right back here again in a couple of years and doing the same old song and dance. I asked you guys last time, if you got a million questions, do the research ahead of time. If you know the question you're going to ask, you could either A, if you're not going to research yourself, the people that you task to get this information, load them up with those questions so they can come with answers for you. Instead of 7 or 8 questions, 10 questions every time somebody comes up and presents something. You could have easily done the work. You guys are elected. You guys can put in the work, because we do. These guys do. I personally know these guys. I've worked with them. I've been on fire assignments with them. I live with them. I've known some of these for over 20 years. I know their families. And you're not going to find more committed members to this community. People who will do everything they can for the city, who can leave, but choose to stay. But understand that they also have families too. They're human, doing a superhuman job. Respect them, support them. Everybody's telling you, taxes. Try the tax out. Listen. Don't turn a blind eye. You got everybody here telling you, let's do the tax. Make it happen. Plain and simple.
Thank you.
Yes, good evening. My name is Justin Rouget. I'm a retired senior citizen. As a retired senior citizen, I wouldn't mind paying this tax. It's 1%. It's a small amount of money, and even on a fixed income, most of us can do it. The poor people in this town, who you're so concerned about, don't pay the tax because most of what they buy is groceries, and they're not taxed. Now, we're at the same spot here today as we were 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, you three did the same thing you're doing right now. And what did that cost us? Well, you wouldn't do a sales tax then, so we lost $10 million. That's what we lost. That's money we could have had in our coffers today, and we would be in fine shape. But you took the same path you're taking today, and you're trying to nickel and dime this problem, and you're never going to get there this way. Now, we have a chance to act right now to solve this problem this year. And you five have to step up, and you have to put the tax on the ballot for November. That means you got to write up the bill and have it in the process by the end of August. And that means you got to get that done. And the staff has outlined all of this. They've told you what we can do at the last meeting, did a very good job of it. And that's our opportunity. And we need a general sales tax, so it will pass at 51 votes. Anything else pushed into next year, the year 2020, is not going to be seen. It's going to be a hell of a year. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on. And this year we have a chance to make it our tax, our issue, that the people in this town will see and hear. And you and you and you have to step up and make this thing work, and not try to push it off on us and make us get signatures and all that just because you won't get off your butt and do something. Now, this is the only chance we got. We can't, nothing else is going to work. And if you push it into next year, you'll find yourself having a harder time to do it. And it's got to be a general tax and not a specific tax, because that requires 2/3, and that's more difficult to do. So please, this is your chance. Next year, if you pass it this year, you got $5 million coming into you that you don't have this year. Think about it. What is wrong with this? We all sit here and wonder, who wins when you cut the police and you increase all the dope peddlers in this town? Who wins? And why are you pushing that agenda? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Leah Braitman, Lompoc. Wow, exactly what Mr. Rouget said, but I don't think you have the political will to push it up to this year. Councilmember Vega, during the last budget workshop, You were annoyed to the point of unpleasantness because staff wasn't respecting the wishes of the majority on the council. But as elected officials, for the time being, you aren't respecting us. Yes, we could have these budget workshops in perpetuity, and the majority on council is still going to want to balance this budget with just cuts. Fine. Let's just see what your idea looks like. Let's see what happens to this city with all those cuts. Let's just see how crummy this city can get. But at least give us a reach around and let us vote on a tax. And we don't want to wait until next November. We want to vote in March. November is way too for these, it's not going to happen. Let us decide. I would ask all 5 of you to approve a vote to the people on the March ballot. A 1% sales tax with 50% going to public safety, 50% going to the general fund. Each election is different. We have voted down tax increases in the past, but Lompoc is a different city now. Let's hear what the voters right now want to say.
Thank you.
Doreen Faving, citizen of Lompoc, longtime resident. I just want to ask the City Council, you guys are the ones that brought in and handpicked our city administrator. In fact, I think twice. We have an excellent staff. Our employees are great. They are your youth coaches. They're on your youth boards. They're a big part of our community. Please, please listen to our staff. They work diligently, hard, all the time on producing stuff out here for our community. They know what they're doing. We have, like she said before, we had 4 finance directors, previous finance directors. They have experience. Please trust our staff. Let our community trust our staff. We're a team. Whether you're city council, city employees, or public people out there, we're all together in our community. And every one of us can make a difference. I try to always tell my kids that. Get involved, make a difference. Because if you don't, just sit back and let somebody else, then we can't make a difference. But everybody can make a difference. Together we can make this work. Please, please support our city staff. Please, let's work together as a team. You need your, including our police and fire. I know how precious our fire department is, especially, and our police. And if you ever go to a car accident, trust me, it's not just our police and fire. You're going to see our street guys. You're going to see all of our employees out there. I know I had a child killed, but the sake of our fire department, he was saved, and he was able to saved long enough to be able to save other people, because our staff is excellent. We have the best workers out here who care about our community and try to make a difference constantly. Try for getting emotional, but when I talk about my son, it gets me really going. But please, please have trust and faith in our staff. It's so important that you support our staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name's Christina, and I'm a park ranger for the city of Lompoc. And I just want to say that our parks are a strong part of our community. We service all the youth groups and other organizations and citizens of our community. Cutting any more will be detrimental to our community. I know you guys don't think as the parks, but it's bad enough. Safety is very important to our parks, you know. Right now, we only have 2 rangers, a handful of workers, and you guys know how the parks look. We barely run off one person, and here comes another homeless, you know. The homeless are back. And in addition, all of our employees I've seen, we all support our local businesses. If you cut back and we don't have no more jobs, how are we going to support our local businesses? That's just something that I've seen. I can't talk about everything else, but we need to change. Something needs to change here. Cutting the police, I can hear how it's taking longer and longer for them to respond, police and firemen. Cutting any more, what's going to happen? I have grandkids here. I hope to God nothing happens to one of our grandkids, and then we're going to realize that cutting back to what we have already will be very devastating. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anne Rouget, I'm a past city council member. Good evening. You've had all these beautiful people here telling you, I personally refuse to beg you to do something you should do as council members to represent us. I'm tired of sitting here listening to this. We have people very, very upset. They're asking you to trust the staff, to trust our public safety, to trust all the departments here. And for the life of me, I've talked to a lot of people in this town, and they do not understand why the heck you three are so opposed to this. Now, if you can give me a good, solid answer that's not a lie, Mr. Mosby, I would like to know it, because there's a lot of people here want to know what the heck is going on. Why are you doing this to us? We get up and beg every friggin' week. And I'm getting tired of it. You're probably getting tired of hearing us talk. But these people care, and so do I. Think about it. There's an election coming up. If you decide not to do this, to put this on the ballot, then I know we can get 2,000 votes that will put it on the ballot, by God, and we'll pass it.
Thank you.
Kathy Howard, I'm a resident and voter in Lompoc, and I'm going to give you some credit and speak a little bit about what Councilwoman Cordova said last time, and that is that you have an obligation as you're looking at this budget to be thinking about the future too, and how this budget impacts the future. Please consider how this fits in with your vision of Lompoc, and I'm going to assume you have a vision, and I'm going to give you credit for being able to do two things at one time. I hope that's not misplaced. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one else rise, we'll close public comment and bring it back for discussion by council. I will say that I appreciate staff continuing to listen to council, take direction for council, and bring forward something I know that you don't agree with. I also want to say that this is not a balanced budget. This is a zero deficit budget. This is the idea that we aren't going to incur additional costs and we're going to save money and move on. Unfortunately, I don't think it's the direction our community needs to go in. All of you who have continued to come to the meetings, who have continued to speak up on the behalf of those who aren't here and advocate for the desire to have a vote, are correct. You have two voting rights in this community. One is who you elect to sit on this dais and make decisions on your behalf, and the right to vote on whether or not there is a tax measure and what that tax measure looks like, and if you're in favor of it. My desire would be to have council give direction tonight to staff, maintain the budget as is from 2017-19, place a tax measure as part of that budget proposal, and put it to a vote. Because if that vote fails, we've seen exactly what option 5 is and what cuts we will absolutely have to make if that tax measure fails. So I think we've done our due diligence. We've examined all of the worst case scenarios. We know what damage it will come to our community if we do not change course. The vision I have for our community is one that we are all proud of, one that we all go out and sing the praises of no matter where we are, when we are, and who we run into. One in which invites people to want to be here because when they visit, they feel welcome, they feel safe, They have a positive experience, which leads to building businesses here, buying homes here, retiring here, raising your kids here. I want a community we're proud for our kids to come back to. So there is a vision. That vision takes investment. That takes revenue. So tonight, my ask from council, my first proposal, is that we accept a deficit budget with a line item for a tax measure and give direction for staff, and then come back and discuss what that tax measure looks like. That's my motion. Councilmember Mosby?
I'll wait for you to get a second. Something else.
Okay. Seeing no second, we'll continue the discussion. Councilmember Mosby.
Are we able to discuss the paper that was passed out to us, the draft general fund? Do you have that available? Was that available for the public back there as well? Okay. Do you have it on the overhead?
No, I don't. Not the whole thing. Yeah.
I think for the sake of conversation, I think it'd be appropriate. It was a document we received. And I thank you for doing this. I mean, this, I think, was where we should have started months ago. And I know your hands have been tied to get to here. But I think that the public could see the numbers that are out there and these catastrophe that people are portraying here. You know, when your proposed expensings, as an example with the police department, things that came about, and the PERS obligation every year seems to be going up. 4 years ago, actually, it was minimal discussion with it. We were going to be able to get through it. They were looking at 7.5% returns, and little by little, as their investments have been coming through, I think you have some new numbers out now for PERS, don't you, for this coming year already? Are they out?
Yeah, they're in the budget, the projected off the valuation. I think that's 2017. Is that right, Brad? 2017 would be our.
And what was their return?
Going to ask Brad again. What was their return last year? I know it was a hair above the 7.2. It's real close to what the amount that they were projecting. We're anticipating probably be a little bit below this year, though.
Understanding all the other machine and mechanisms that are going, I mean, you're looking at the PD expense going from 9.8 million to 11.1 million. So it doesn't look like we're not trying to fund them. I mean, that's a significant increase. And what we're looking at here is when options is a $300,000 reduction of that much of an increase. So that's $1.2 million in increase. We're looking at 300,000. What's set out here with fire, the anticipated increases in fire are from 6.5 to 7.4 million a year. So it wasn't like we're looking at not increasing movements going in all the departments, I do believe, right?
Yeah, you're correct. Mm-hmm.
So we do have new revenue from SB1 money coming in, if I remember, for asphalt as well, which helps. Some people had questions about what's going on with the asphalt. There's another $1 million in revenue there. And I believe you have money in a fund right now that has accumulated almost $1 million more for asphalt.
Yeah, and we anticipate we're going to put something in the budget, and we haven't quite figured out what we're going to fund, but we're definitely working on probably alleys, something that the utilities would actually be using up.
And I just, want the people to remember, it wasn't long ago that we were sitting here, actually 2 years ago, and there was a fire station that was going to cost us $29.8 million and $1.8 million in new staffing numbers. And this is what a lot of the last tax component was going to be going to, was to the new station. It's still in the capital improvement plan. It's still in the book today. And it's still an anticipated movement for what's going on. I know that's one of the reasons why I held off on a tax measure. And I've also said that I would be willing to bring back the tax measure for discussion after we get through the budget component. I'll make the motion again today to bring it back for discussion. But I think if we go through and you put a budget component together, and you think that a tax is going to pass, and it doesn't pass, and as the city manager said, we'd have to take drastic steps. And if we had to be a year from now, what you see in these option 4 or 5, it'd be twice what's in option 4 or 5 that we'd have to get through.
That's correct.
That's correct. So that's why it has to be done at this level and component. That way we can, if a tax measure does pass, then you can resurrect what you need to do. But to get this done, you need to go and have the cuts in place, ready in case it does fail. And I know 4 times tax measures have failed. They're not all the same, and I know they're not all the apples to orange comparison, but Lompoc's not necessarily supportive of passing tax measures. So I think it's important that we do and go through this work so that we don't end up in using the city manager's words, drastic measures. And I don't want to see us to roll into that. We have a number of the things that we're looking at here are positions that are currently vacant. And as in the PD, there's 3 that are vacant. And my recommendation, if we do any of these options, is that when we see other revenues, because there are other anticipated revenues that are coming in, that those positions be the first 3 that they backfill as soon as they can. I think you have other tax revenues that are coming in. I think you've been pretty lenient on your estimation on tax revenues. No? Yeah? Sales tax?
I've been depending on our experts at HDL and giving us numbers, and they usually see the roll ahead of time, so we actually know what the first year will be, and the next year's kind of a projection of what we think will be a continuation of the same.
Right. So I think it's important that we go through this step to make sure that if the tax measure doesn't pass, we don't have to take drastic measures. And, I'm in supporting going through this. I appreciate the city manager, working through this. I think, 5 o'clock Friday or something like that, we got this email with option 4 and 5 for us to look at. And about the same time frame, we got this together as well. And I think it's important for the people to say, we're looking at cuts in the increase and not, is anything getting cut less than what it is currently this year?
In this budget, in this presentation here, this is taking all our positions and funding them. So it's a fully funded budget right here. We didn't have a fully funded budget last time. We had held positions. So it's, if we're, just to let you know what you're looking at, so when you start making your decisions.
But I think it's important to understand what we're doing is doing a reduction of the expansion. Understanding that we have that big elephant in the room, the pension obligation, that's just beginning to keep creeping up, about $500,000 a year above in general fund only increases.
It's about 650, I think, is what the general fund component.
So I understand, but I understand what we do is we have to make sure that anything we do, we know where the money's going and why we're doing something. But to just a blanket say we need more money when nobody's even analyzed, we've never approved the capital improvement plan, I don't believe, have we?
We did the capital improvement in the budget, but we didn't do the plan yet.
Yeah, it's never been approved, so we don't even have an analytics out there to know what we're doing, and just to go out and say we need more money because it's a tax, we need more money. I think we need to sit down, analyze completely what needs to happen with it, what the plan is, what projects are on a list, so that we, for sake of transparency, we tell the public what would we do. What would we do with the tax money? What would we do with the new revenue that might come in? Where would it go specifically? But just to say we need more money just because we need more money without any of the analytics behind it. I mean, remember, there is going to be repercussions. The money's going to come from somewhere. It's not going to just fall from the sky. But we need to know what we're doing with this money before we ask the public to pay a tax component. I think that would be a safe assumption. But moving forward this way, I appreciate what staff has done and brought to us, and I think we can hopefully get somewhere tonight.
Before we move on, City Manager, Mr. Troop, if we were to pass a quote-unquote deficit budget with a tax line item, and that tax measure passed, and we had this additional funds, Is it not proper protocol to then come back to council with, here's our additional funds, here's what we recommend as staff to spend it on, but also get input from council about where those funds would be spent? So you would have amendments to that said budget once you realize you have the additional funds. That nothing in the budget we currently created or the direction given would say how that money would be spent, because we don't know that we have it yet.
If I understand correctly, yes, that it would be passed, excuse me, we'd have a line item in our budget that would say new sales tax, whatever you want to call it, half cent or 1 penny cent. And as that, if it was to be passed, then we could come back once we get a full understanding of what exactly that will be bringing in, and we can then counter it with where it needs to go in the budget, and then bring back any ideas for the council to approve.
And then on the second part about a capital improvement plan, the book which Councilmember Mosby is referencing, is never something necessarily approved by council. It's literally a wish list that is put together that says, here's the different projects that need to be done over different time frames, and here's the potential cost depending on which version of that project you then choose to put into the budget. And until it's pulled from those options and actually put into a budget, it's not actually an approved plan.
Yeah, so the two documents are separate, they're not the same. So if you approve the budget, it's one. If you approve the capital improvement plan, that's saying that everything in there at some point in time, the city would like to get done. It's not that it's in the budget, it's saying, usually what we'll have on the bottom, it'll say, here's the project, here's the costs, here's where all the funding is going to come from. And it might be a plan that says this funding is going to be a grant we're going to get 3 years out, so it's not going to be in the budget. And if that doesn't come into fruition, then that might get pushed out another 2 or 3 years. So it's a living document in the sense it keeps moving as we know what funds are coming in or not coming in, and something changes, we go, oh, we didn't need this project anymore, we need something else, it'll adapt to it. So.
And some of the projects that are listed in it have multiple scenarios as to how that project could be accomplished, which is why you might see, say, a fire station designed in multiple ways, so there might be 3 options with 3 variances of those costs, because you're not sure at the time you choose to move it into the budget and move forward on it, what those fundings might be available to you.
Right, and as you move out, if it's a large, like that's a very large project, if we go to the one that was discussed earlier. So by the time the funding and everything comes for that, you'd want to review the plan again to make sure nothing's changed. If it's a 1 year, 2 year, 3, however long it took to get to that point. Things have changed, technology changes, you might want to review that. Prices could go up, prices can go down. Right now, prices would probably going up because of all the construction that is going on throughout the country. So even though the plan might say it was approved for X amount of dollars, by the time you're ready to do it and it's revisited, it might be changing up or down. So.
And finally, to that combination, given our current budget scenario, the current debt that has been explained to us numerous times is predominantly focused on the issue of an unfunded liability impacting our general fund, and what minimal we might be able to do as far as capital improvement or infrastructure would be smaller projects, most likely funded through grants if we could get them.
That would be correct.
Okay. Councilmember Mosby.
During the last budget, actually, the capital improvement book was part of the request by staff to pass along simultaneously with the budget, the whole book. We had it pulled off and separated, and it was to be brought back to us for discussion and for finalization of the capital improvement plan. It, in the last 2 years, hasn't been brought back to us. But there are components of the capital improvement plan that are used to calculate impact fees that are charged to businesses. When you look at the last 30 years of capital improvement plans, you can see how they're diagrammed out and how those components are used to move forward to charging the impact fees. But it is an integral part, at least the city of Lompoc has used that in diagramming how we're moving forward. We also assess motions in the budget as we progress into projects that we're going to do. But it is an integral. I think the last time was a 15-year capital improvement plan that the city was operating on. But they've done it since the late 60s, so.
Councilmember Cordova.
So budgets are complex no matter how you look at them. And when you're looking at these types of figures, they're even more complex. And when you factor in the whole government portion of it and not being business and it being government, that's even more complex. My observation is that this didn't start yesterday, it didn't start last budget season. This has been something that's been going on for years. When it comes to numbers, projections, or actual figures, I think we're all over the place. And it's going to take a while for us to fix this issue. And I just want to make the statement that passing a 1% sales tax, though I am 100% in agreement with allowing the public to vote, it's not the saving grace. It's really not. It will impact our bottom line, and if spent responsibly, I think that it will be very useful to our existing condition. As a business person, my nature is to follow the numbers. I just want to see the numbers. When I look at, as Councilmember Mosby stated just a little while ago, I mean, this handout was given to us on Friday, so not a whole lot of time to go through it, but nonetheless, I did get a chance to go through some of the stuff, and from the last actual adopted budget actuals, what came in, and versus what we're proposing for this new budget cycle, you are looking at an increase of $6 million in revenue. They're projecting $6 million additional in revenue, but you're also projecting an additional $11.2 million, if that's correct, in expenditures. So as a business person, or just in my nature of wanting to know where these numbers go, I can understand Councilmember Mosby's expressing himself and saying that he just wants to be able to see where some of these numbers are going. From the adopted budget, if I'm looking at this little book that I was handed shortly after being sworn in, you're looking at a $624,000 difference, which is an increase from what was actually projected in revenue and what the city has received actual and projected through the 2019 so far. So there is additional money that came in from the projections. How we're projecting an additional $6 million, I would just love to be able to understand that, and I would love to also be able to understand where we're getting an additional 11 million. And I understand that you just said, Dean, that you're looking at this as fully staffing, as a fully staffed general fund, right?
If you think about it, we have a deficit of 1.8 per year, so that's 3.6 million in the budget cycle. That's in the budget right now. We haven't decided on where we're going to cut. There was probably a 1.3 million increase in the CalPERS cost.
So is CalPERS included in this?
Yes.
In this? In the uses?
Yes.
Okay.
And then another thing that we do, which is kind of an oddity, if you will, is we kind of overfund the street projects. So if we have money that comes in from Measure A or TDA, we won't be stranglehold. So that's kind of where that 6 million, if you add all those up, that kind of was where that money is.
Okay. So again, I think that what Councilmember Mosby was saying is correct in a way that it's not that we're just cutting from what was actual last budget season. We're actually, there is an increase in both areas. There is an increase in revenues, and obviously there's almost a double amount of increase in expenses if you're looking at all these areas being fully funded. In my opinion, I would think that if this is a fully funded expense uses diagram of what we could fully fund, then I would think that we could potentially get to a balanced budget and be able to move on and be able to still do a tax measure that would benefit for the future planning and the future of what we need to get done as far as all the other needs that we have. My reason for not supporting cuts solely, even looking at these numbers, is because, again, it plays into the fact that we're not planning for the future. If we just keep cutting what we have right now, then we're not planning. There's no plan for the future, and I absolutely think that a capital improvement plan should be part of the budget discussion. It should go hand in hand, because that's part of planning for what we need to do in the future. So why it's not, I have no idea.
If I could, One of the reasons why it's not is we went through the implementation of our new system, and we're so far behind. I know that with last budget cycle was the first time we ever did the capital improvement the way we did it. And it was to try and introduce, and I like it. I like that you guys are saying you don't like this or you like that, you want to see this. That's what that whole capital improvement document is all about. I'd love to bring it back. It doesn't have to be part of this adopted budget, but I'd love to bring it back because I think it's a very valuable tool. And I'm trying to take it out of the impact fee situation. I like to do a separate study for the impact fees. So when we do those fees, that way you'll have a free document to actually, exactly what you're saying. What would you want this city to look like? What kind of ideas do you want to see? And then that's a book that we can all look at and say, we like that, we don't like that, that's too much, let's do that. But to me, it's a planning docket. It is a wish list. It's a dream document. It's how to build a better city, I think. But I'm trying to break that out of the impact fees, and I'm trying to make it something totally separate than the adopted budget as well. Just the talk.
Thank you. Councilmember Starbuck.
First, I'd like to start by thanking Dean and Mr. Throop for the light reading material over the Memorial Day weekend. Second, yeah, you're here for me, thanks. And a couple of statements. I think there's been a big misconception. I know that I've stated it several times before. We're not here to cut fire. We're not here to cut police. Once we have a balanced budget, then we can discuss revenue enhancement. It's worst case. I want to remind people, they think, oh, this tax is it's gonna save us, we'll be able to do all this, we'll keep people. Just remember, most of this tax, if it's going to be, is gonna leave Lompoc. So it's not gonna be backfilled into Lompoc. It will leave Lompoc, this tax. It is for some obligations that we're gonna have. I guess the other question here is gonna be the PERS obligation is gonna grow. Everybody's come up here and said, we want a 1%, it's only 1 cent. Is 1 cent going to keep up with inflation? And you have to ask yourself, well, what kind of tax? Nobody's proposed a tax. They've just said 1%. What percent? 1%. What about sunset? Do we want to, when is it going to go? There's much discussion to happen on this, but the bottom line is that first the budget has to go worst case. It has to have the balance factor in it, and I think we're very close with these documents, so thank you.
I don't see this as the solution. I see it as you have been presented with the worst-case scenario. We know what cuts will have to happen if the community decides it, but these two options, no matter what, impact public safety. Some in some very direct ways. Holding open those vacant 3 positions is impacting our ability to be proactive. It means we're only reactive. Holding back on overtime for fire. We don't know what kind of fire season it's going to be, and already yesterday on Memorial Day was our first fire just at the corner of Highway 1 and the 101 in our backyard. So holding back on overtime isn't an option. Funding so that we don't have to worry about overtime, really, really important. Eliminating steps in the firefighter pay after something we negotiated, that's not honoring a negotiation we've already said we're committed to paying for. And our community is standing in front of us saying they are willing to commit to paying for those things. Indirectly, code enforcement, economic development, planning, those all impact public safety at some level. There's difficulty in incentivizing individuals to come and build houses and do business here if the rating for our public safety falls, and therefore impacts their insurance ratings and actually impacts all of our insurance ratings. So I ask you, how does the city work to bring businesses into town and facilitate navigating through those codes without people specific to those jobs? How does the city promote successes, events, opportunities in Lompoc that is basically free advertising if we don't have someone actively writing and making those connections and promoting them? Ultimately, how do we honor our commitment that we made when we took the oath, as one of our residents pointed out, to the Constitution saying it is our job, number 1, for public safety? These don't solve that problem. All they do is make more cuts. So again, it is perfectly legal and perfectly responsible to put forward a budget that you can call balanced because the line items equal zero, because this is a budget. It's a prediction. It's an estimate that says we're going to hold where we are. And we're going to put a line item for a tax measure, which we can have a full meeting beating us each other up about what that looks like and whether we can get a special tax or general tax. Put that line item in that says tax measure. Put the 2 zeros in place, and we approve it. And we come back to the next meeting and we talk about sales tax. What does that look like? Can we get agreement on a general sales tax? How is it going to be applied? It's not going to solve every problem, but it'll definitely keep us from drowning and definitely keep the ship from going down. And then, hopefully, 5-0 support it so that it can be a general sooner rather than later. But our first goal tonight is to give staff direction, and I think we absolutely can say, you have a balanced budget with a line item for a tax measure, and if it fails, option 5 is what happens. We've seen that. There is nothing wrong with putting off those firings if we don't have to eliminate those people, that we don't have to hold those positions open. So I ask you why you want to go ahead and see blood and see pink slips go out as of July 1st just to prove your point that you want to cut now, and then if the tax measure passes, you're willing to backfill, you're really willing to hire, you're willing to bring people back and retrain them and spend more money rather than save money now through not firing individuals that know their job, work really hard, are here doing the work already. Give the community a chance to prove you wrong and vote for this measure. And then if it fails, we know exactly where the pink slips go and how deep the cuts are and what our community is dealing with. But doing that now, not a good idea. It's not visionary. It's setting up a legacy of failure. It's saying you have no will to respect the community. And I think better of you all. I really do. And I really want you to look at the evidence, say you've had enough information and are willing to trust the community to vote on this. So again, my motion is to pass a balanced or zero deficit budget with no changes at the moment, with a line item for a tax measure that we come back and speak to again. And I'll look for a second on that.
I will second that with the understanding that we will be able to come back and actually talk about the tax measure and be able to dig into what we really need to do for the future of Lompoc.
Thank you. Councilmember Starbuck.
Well, we're into this a little bit prematurely. At the last meeting, I had mentioned that I was going to spend some time with Mr. Albro, which he doesn't have a lot of it, so I'm trying not to take up a lot of it at this time. But I have some ideas, that I'd like to bounce off of the council later on. But like I say, there's many questions. A budget, you just said, is very fluent and moves and all that, but a tax doesn't. It's there, it stays. So it's going to be a huge decision and a big discussion about it. And I've probably got a few more hours with Mr. Albro next, with what I'm going to propose sometime. So I really don't want to include the tax line item on this yet. I'm not saying no to tax. I'm just saying let's get the budget right. And if we're going to ask for more money, I think we need to really have our head above the sand and say this is what we intend and this is what we can do.
So I have a motion and a second. I'm opening the floor for discussion, thanks to Councilmember Starbuck. Councilmember Vega.
I think the tax measure is something that we need to look at in the future, but there's nothing wrong with trying to come to a consensus of a balanced budget in the beginning here. The path of least resistance is a yes. It's always say yes without knowing why. We want you to know why. We want to know why. Where are we going? What's the vision? I've often said that Lompoc deserves better. We do deserve better, but we haven't grown in so long. We've looked at the economic forecast numbers, and we have negative growth here. With negative growth, you can't have increased revenues, you can't move forward, you can't pay your bills. The balanced budget is expected from the city on normal, customary, everyday revenues, but not a save-all because of a tax measure to come back and balance your budget. I think that we should be able to balance our budget with money that's normal and customary and everyday business here in Lompoc. The tax measure is an addition to take care of the obligations that are outside the box. We've heard about CalPERS. We've heard about the public safety entity, which is it's necessary, and the parks and the streets. All city departments are important. I don't think anybody wants to see anybody cut, get pink slips, or laid off. But the balanced budget is not too much to ask. I've had discussions with people that do multi-million-dollar budgets, and they've never heard of doing a hypothetical based on a tax measure that hasn't passed yet because it's going to happen. So there's people out there that claim that they think that they understand the whole budget by sitting out here. I hope you do. But we're empowered with helping the city move forward in a fashion that we can actually explain it to you, that we don't have to go through all the books and everything that's probably very difficult for the public to grasp. So I'm going to stick with a balanced budget. There's people out here laughing and ridiculing and trying to be condescending to us for doing our homework. But that's where I'm going to stick. I'm going to stick with this balanced budget. We try and mix it up with convoluting the tax measure with balancing the budget when those are two separate issues. One is probably going to happen, but we need to finish this first.
So for clarification to our city attorney, many communities around us have passed what is called a balanced budget with a line item that says, dependent upon a tax measure that may or may not pass, and then have, whether or not it's passed or not, come back and delivered new information and had discussions about, okay, it didn't pass, here's what we're going to do, and here's why it passed and what we're going to do. So for clarification, please share with council that it is perfectly legit and it's truly a balanced budget if that line item exists in a budget.
I guess I won't comment on what exactly it should be called. It could be called different things, but it is perfectly allowable to pass a budget that has a line item for a tax as anticipated revenue, and if the tax doesn't come in, then it can be adjusted midstream to account for that.
Thank you. So, while I would prefer, like Councilmember Starbuck, not to discuss the details of what that tax measure looks like at the moment, staff has asked for direction so they may begin putting a budget together that hopefully could be ready by June 30th. And the best recommendation at the moment is that we give direction to not make any drastic changes and add that line item and come back as soon as possible for a discussion of what that tax measure would look like so we know whether it's a special tax or whether there's enough support for a general tax. And again, trying to be respectful not only of council members here tonight, but to the public that has turned out one more time, thank you, and to staff. Again, the motion on the floor is for a budget with a line item for a tax measure, no changes based on any cuts or elimination of positions. I have a second. Any further discussion? Okay, let's vote. And that fails 3-2. So I will look for direction to staff regarding budget. Councilmember Starbuck.
I recognize that option 4 is not a balanced, but it's, I'm going to say in the big scheme, it's a fairly light deficit. Could we go ahead and begin our budget book on that, and then would we want to have a special meeting? I would like to, I don't know if we're going to do council request or whatever, but to have a special meeting to discuss what you and I are currently discussing.
If I may, thank you, Mayor Council. Yeah, the 71,000, we can we can fix that some way to get it to zero. I think the last meeting we did discuss coming back again per the council's directive to have another meeting to discuss a sales tax. And the thought at that time, I was thinking we can present general tax, general election, general tax, special election, all the different little nuances, because there really is a lot of nuances that could go forth. We can do that at another, relatively soon. I'm looking to Dean too, since he'll be helping. I'm sorry? Yeah, so possibly first week of June or something like that. Or is that next week?
Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah. Dean, would you be available to work with me on my proposal in time to do that?
Yeah, my only concern is I want some sort of direction on what we're going to do for our general fund. And we can talk later on, we don't have to talk about the tax or finalize the tax, or we can open that dialogue later on too. But I need to know what we're going to do with our general fund so I can distribute the costs out to the utilities. That's why you're only getting one pamphlet, and that's one of the reasons why I'm quite a bit behind. Last time I brought to you a budget that if the tax didn't pass, that was option 3 on the last one, that you would have a $700,000 deficit. You could, if the tax didn't go through, you could pass that as coming out of fund balance. If the tax did go through, you'd probably have a small surplus, about $500,000 or $600,000. So I'm just putting options out there. My only concern is I really need to know how we're going to run our general fund so I can do the budget.
Could you make that a little clearer to me here?
Sure. I know the boss brought up another option. This is the option that we left off last time, and to me,
that's what option 4 here is, a combination of
2 and 3. Yeah, and I can go back one if you want to see 2. I'm bringing this one up because this one has the tax on it. It's a balanced budget with a tax. However, if the tax didn't go through, we would have a deficit of around $700,000. If the tax did go through, we'd probably have a surplus of $500,000 or $600,000.
I think if it didn't go through, correct me, Dean, then what we would do is use our reserves to cover that deficit.
And I say that because I know how many vacancies we have right now, and it's more than what we should be budgeting. We have a pretty good sized vacancy at 28 point something positions. So I know that we're going to have some benefit from that above and beyond that for $454,000 down at the bottom of held positions. I know about where our max is, and if the tax thing didn't go through, like I said, this would produce about a $700,000 deficit. And it may be something that if the tax didn't go through, we can have another meeting and we can figure out how we're going to tackle that $700,000 deficit. I don't foresee us in the first year having a very big budget, a very big deficit because of the number of vacancies we have currently. And you're welcome to go with the other ones too if you wanted to use those. I'm trying to get an agreement of where we can move the general fund. Because to me, it's important that I get direction from the general fund because I'm running out of time to put the rest of the budget together for the utilities, the housing, the internal service fund, the special revenue funds.
So option 3 would work for you to be able to move it through, and if we failed at coming back and discussing a budget that included a tax later on, there's enough general fund to cover that potential $700K.
And another thing too is if you guys said, okay, Dean, go with this, I'm still going to bring you back a draft budget to look at, and you can still make modifications to it. I was just hoping that we can say, okay, Dean, go do that, and we'll talk again. I can bring it back in, let's say, 3 weeks. We can have a draft budget, the whole publication brought to you. I could do the supplement or something so you could look it over like we did with the general fund.
Okay. Councilmember Mosby.
Yes, my question is for Councilmember Starbuck. Did you see me need more time?
We can still talk, we can still talk about anything. And like I said, we're not saying this is the end of our discussion.
No, I understand. You and I, like I say, we're looking at some options.
And I appreciate that.
Thank you for helping me.
Yeah, and I appreciate everybody coming to me and trying to give direction because this is complicated. And everybody has different ideas, you know what I mean? And that's where we can work together and say, no, yes, no. And
I have you sold on it. I was just saying new option 4 here with the option of 2 and 3. I'm going to say it presents us a fairly balanced budget. There's enough push in here, and Mr. Throop just said that, we can make this work. And like you say, it's a fluid document. Then we can get into additional things. I would just say that if we were to give you the guidance to say option 4, that would be enough for you to go forward, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I think it's a little bit more aggressive than this one here.
Yeah, I would be okay with option 3 if you would change to option 3, but I can't support option 4. It's too drastic. Councilmember Mosby.
So to Councilmember Starbuck, option 4, I don't think we can do the FSPEP suspension or the cert pay suspension. So if you were supporting option 4, I would take those out. I don't think that those are items that we could use in there. Likewise, I think the public information officer, I'd like to see that position go to a grants writing position. So there would be a savings component there. But at the end, backfill the rest with reserves to give it a balanced budget.
I disagree. I think you're trying to make a public information officer into a grant position. Grant positions typically are far more expensive than a public information officer, so it would actually be costing us money. And again, option 4 is far more of a drastic cut than option 3. Option 3 holds open positions and eliminates vacant positions, and so it doesn't cause any pink slips to go out and gives direction and allows general fund reserves to cover in case we don't get a tax measure. So I'm for option 3.
And Mayor, real quick, I think Mr. Mosby had said that, Councilmember Mosby, that the 2 suspend the FSTEP and the suspend the cert pay, those are negotiated in a contract, so they would have to be discussed through the FAR. I think that's what you were saying. Is that correct?
I was saying I don't believe they could be an option in here, so I'd say remove those. In fact, I'll make it as a motion as such for option number 4 to remove those 2, have that one position become a grants writer position, and move forward with this and backfill with reserves. And I'd make that as a motion.
I'll give you a second on that.
So there is a motion and a second, and we'll open for discussion. Councilmember Starbuck.
What would this do with the bottom line on here, Mr. Albro? I mean, is it still, like I say, I know that we're going to have a little bit of a deficit, but now all of a sudden we're into, another 275,000 deficit on top.
Well, we're being more conservative on the held positions. I think, but he's saying we could put in our held positions. Like I said, we're kind of high on our held positions. We're having a problem, maintaining our services. So it's doable.
If I can just point out too, it does worry me. We have 12% or more of our positions are held. And, I'm hearing feedback from council and citizens. Why is it taking so long? We're losing essentially 12% of our staff to being held. So it does put a little hink or a wrench in the works trying to get through things. I just want to make sure we all understand when you have that many positions held, it's tough for staff to maintain the same level.
Well, I mean, the last time we did a budget, we got down to 122,000 for trail maintenance, so I didn't really want to go that deep. I just thought maybe we could look and say this would be a workable.
Councilmember Mosby. So we have a motion on the floor to accept option 4, which eliminates the public information officer position and the suspend steps F and suspend certificate pay being pulled. Any further discussion? Well, I will be voting against this because I don't agree with it. If there was any option that we should go to balance a budget, it would be option 3 that was put before us, so I'm letting you know before we vote. I'll call for a vote. That passes 3-2. I would ask that the city manager bring back dates and times as a proposal for further discussion on a tax measure. At the next council meeting would probably be the best time. Okay. A request for dates at the next council meeting. Give it some time for us to look at calendars because there's a lot going on in the month of June and may require some finagles. We will, written communications.
Nothing.
Thank you. Oral communications for 2 minutes. You are welcome to step forward and have 2 minutes of oral communication if you would like. Seeing no one rise, we will adjourn to the Lompoc City Council meeting's regular meeting at 6:30 p.m. on June 4th. Oh, look at you rushing to get to the...
I was trying to get up here before you said we're not going to go any farther.
Okay.
Once again, I'm Ron Fink. Okay. In 1950s, Fred Allen was
Let me unadjourn the meeting really quickly.
Oh, yeah, read it.
All right, so we're unadjourned and oral communications are open again. Go ahead.
Are we okay now? Okay. Okay. In the 1950s, Fred Allen was a comic on the radio, and he said, "A conference is a gathering of people who singly can do nothing, but together can decide that nothing can be done." That's what you did tonight. You decided nothing can be done about the budget deficit. Y'all have, pretty well ridiculed the staff throughout this whole process. Some have provided false and misleading testimony to support their positions. And finally, you provided the staff with some direction, but the direction is to hand out pink slips on the 1st of July. The budget that you proposed cuts $1.9 million from the public safety component. Maybe you ought to get out your calculator and add that up, because that's what he just did. Okay. Maybe you think the problem's just going to go away with time, but it's not. Okay, you want to talk about a tax at a future date. You didn't set a future date yet, so we don't know when you're going to talk about that. That's the solution. An observer of government once said, "Politicians will do the right thing, but only after everything else they did failed." Okay, and this is what you just did. You failed. 3 of you failed again. Failed the city. And trying to solve this budget with cutting, it ain't working. So maybe you need to rethink what you just did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deb Andrews, Mission Hills. I want to thank council members for studying the facts, giving us good information, going through it, and having an understanding of what it means and what it means to us in the future. The Lompoc city budget has increased over 50% adjusted for inflation in the last 20 years. Our population has remained the same or gone down a little bit. You cannot tax your way out of bad policies. And we've been handed some really bad policies from Sacramento. There's a lot of things to deal with. I really appreciate your time and attention, and it's a lot of work to figure this out. Thank you very much for your vote tonight.
Keith Fikert, we got to reset it. Yeah, Keith Fikert, resident of Lompoc. I just want to be clear tonight that what was just voted was to eliminate 2 code enforcement officers with the city of Lompoc, the elimination of the economic development, including the Chamber of Contributions, elimination of the public information officer, and eliminating of 2 planning positions, as well as a battalion chief for our fire department. I'm extremely distraught and disappointed in all of you tonight who had a chance to really look at these numbers. And I also want to address Councilmember Vega to come up here and tell everybody that you know better than everyone and that only you understand these numbers and that you have to mansplain it to the audience is just absolutely atrocious and unprofessional for an elected position. We had the opportunity tonight to allow our citizens to practice democracy and vote. Just to vote, that is all. And our mayor has very reasonably and rationally explained why we can just put as a line item, and if it doesn't work, go for cutting people's jobs. But you just took several people who have families and mortgages and everything else and threw them under the bus, and you're going to get rid of them on July 1st. I really hope that when you see these people in the hallways as you work here at City Hall, that you look them in the face and you meet them one-on-one, face-to-face, and you explain yourself to them in person. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Charlie Martinez, Vandenberg Fire, Local F-116. Again, I don't know what language you guys understand it in. You're telling people you want to cut jobs. People have told you, let's do a taxing. You won't even hear it. You won't even entertain it. You're sending an absolutely clear, crystal clear message to the public safety, the people that dedicate their time to the city, the people that serve Lompoc. You're sending an absolutely clear message that you don't care if they stick around or not. You don't care if we're losing people to other departments. You don't care if you're going to have our city staff workers overworked because we want to eliminate more jobs because we can't figure out how to say, listen, let's listen to people. Let's put a tax manager on. Let us do it. Don't cut our heads off right away. Don't cut off the opportunity for us to vote. A lot of us served in this country. We should have the right to be able to give us that opportunity to vote on that or not. Give us that opportunity to lead. Don't pretend like you think you know better than us when everybody but one person has told you, hey, let's do a tax thing. Entertain that. You're supposed to be the voice. You've heard a lot of voices here. Public safety is here. These guys here, these hardworking people that work for our cities, in every department, rely on you to tell them, we appreciate you. We want you working here. I get you want to balance a budget. Do that. Every other city still does that, and they still have a tax measure. It's worked. Several cities. Again, do the work and ask the questions. Don't sit there and wait for other people to come to you. You have phone calls. You have phones. Call. Go visit other cities. It has worked. Is there problems? Do you have to work through it? Absolutely. You have to work through it. But it does work. Several other cities have shown its work. Sunset, figured all that stuff out. But it has worked. And what you've done is told the cities you don't care what they think. You know more than them. You're intelligent guys, but you don't know everything. The people have spoken. You've chosen not to listen.
Thank you.
Oh, gosh. Hi, Carol Redhead back again. It's the same 3 guys, a fudgy-wudgy, money figures. Still wondering what the heck is up with you 3. Mr. Starbuck, the 1-cent sales tax does not go to Sacramento. It stays in the city. Okay? Okay. Wow. I don't understand how you don't understand that. You know, whether you're rich or poor, you pay 1 cent on a dollar. On food, you pay no tax. So it's a fair tax, and it's not like a state or federal tax. It's not a fee on the union. It's not the tax that comes from unions. It's not that burden at all. None of those are the same thing at all. And every single city around here has passed it. The people all voted for it. We want to vote for it. I think that, the founding fathers gave us the right to vote. You're holding it all back, and there's got to be some weird reason why, because it's all this fudgy-wudgy figures that you three have, and we don't trust you anymore. Wait till we vote again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lorraine Waldow, resident Lompoc. We heard a presentation tonight from the Chamber of Commerce about all of the things that are brought into the city that will result in sales tax increases for our city. We have the dog show coming back. If we don't have maintained parks, if we don't have boulevards that look welcoming, if we don't have safe neighborhoods, if we don't have safe parks, if we have drugs going on in those places, how does that bring in the people that make our life positive? I'm getting really depressed, and I feel like we are becoming that city when I read every news publication after every one of these meetings about how we're not doing it. And it is tarnishing what we all hoped would be our city.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, members of the community, city staff. I want to address the two items that are on option 4 for the removal. One is the battalion chief. That's the fire marshal position. That's going to go to a 56-hour work week. That currently right now is a 40-hour work week individual that is there dedicated to review plans, to help the economic growth. As people have development happening and different remodels even in your own personal home. So just realize that that basically became less available about 2/3 of the time. So that's going to happen. The other bigger issue is the overtime. We've given you stats, fire chief, Chief Fetterman, articulated to you the challenges that we're going to be faced with cutting overtime and how that takes the rescue out of service. So we've shared the data. We've shared with you how many times the rescue's been in everyone's district. It's ran 500 calls within a 6-month period. That still isn't enough. That workload goes to our engines. That's something that we can't sustain. So with that, we thought that effort was good enough to where we can help support and not have that be cut through overtime and having that be out of service. I feel like we failed you, sorry. But the one last thing that all we can do is share stories with what that rescue does for us. So I'll share a personal story from me. As a captain at Station 2, I got called to is a code blue, which means somebody's heart stopped. But the problem is it was for a lady that just gave birth to 2 babies in their house. The code blue was 2 babies. So knowing that I have the rescue available, I called for the rescue to respond with me. So picture that. It takes 3 people to do CPR, good, justified CPR that will actually allow you to go to the hospital, get the appropriate care, and come home and live a normal life. We give you 3 people on you just alone, but it takes 5 of us. So I had 3 patients at that house. Each baby needed 3 people for each one of them. I was only able to give them 1. And then when we got to send them to the hospital, a firefighter had to ride with each baby to the hospital, and then we still had the mom who's sitting there bleeding out. So how do we deal with that now? Because if the same scenario happened, I can give you 1 person for 3 patients. So those are the answers that are going to have to be answered for. I apologize to you again in the community. We try our best. I hope that the council in the future council date can come up with appropriate tax to help keep this community moving forward, because it's our home. We're in it together. I believe you feel like you're in it together too, and we just appreciate your support, and just thank you for your time. Sorry.
Thank you. Seeing no one else rise, we will close oral communications for the evening. We will adjourn to the Lompoc City Council meeting 6:30 p.m. next Tuesday, June 4th. Thank you.